I did 200 milligrams of ketamine via an IV drip for my first experience with ketamine. And that was a true way to jump into the experience. Now, I did this in a medical setting, and an anesthesiologist administered this. And it is safe. There's, monitors making sure your blood pressure and heart rate are okay. And so I knew I was in the safest, most regulated space I could be in, and that brought me a lot of peace knowing that. All right, so initially they give you a little shot into your IV line, and that's just a test to make sure that you don't have an adverse reaction, especially if you're someone who's like legit never taken ketamine, which I hadn't. And I didn't have any weird reaction, and it wasn't really that noticeable. I just felt kind of chill. And then they're like, okay, if you want to go ahead, we can go ahead and administer the actual like IV drip. And so I said, okay. And when I tell you I blasted off in like what felt like seconds. It was probably maybe 30 seconds to a minute or longer, but it was like, I went from 0 to 1,000,000 really quick. And what's interesting about ketamine is it gives you this feeling that you are separate from your body. Obviously, it has like disassociative effects. And I was worried about that because I've had disassociation, derealization without being on anything. So I was worried that maybe it would make it worse, and it definitely didn't, but I'll talk more about that later. It did not make that worse. Now, it felt spatially like I was being like elevated on this platform, but that my consciousness was separate from my body. So there was this level of separation, and I would get so out there that I would like forget that I had a body, and I would like want to remind myself. So I would kind of look at my feet. Now, should have mentioned this to begin with. I did this with a blindfold on. All right, a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people, they look at trippy videos and stuff like that. I did this with a blindfold on. And I would strongly encourage people to do that, except for a lot of people, they don't like it because it's overwhelming. But having the blindfold on made me go inside and really work on myself. So my intention was to work on OCD, to look at past experiences that were traumatic, to look at my relationships and all of that, all right? But I had an idea of like what I would look at, what I would entertain. And honestly, it just took me in different directions. I thought about my personal relationships. I thought about them so deeply. And I thought about relationships that I wasn't like necessarily like anticipating that I would think about. And that's what was so interesting, is that it almost got to pick. It was like it has its own kind of consciousness, and it was like, now this is what you're gonna think about. And it would bring resolve. So it was very encouraging and supportive. It was almost as if it was speaking to me like psychically. It was not, I wasn't hearing anything like auditory hallucinations. It was just, I was getting these messages repeatedly. And basically it was in sections, all right? So it was like, okay, think about this relationship, think about this person, and realize how much this means. And then once you do, then we can move on. And so it would basically be like, okay, yeah, you got the message. Let's go to the next thing. So it was like I had a roadmap to my brain and my experiences and my relationships and all of that. And it was like, after it showed me the first one, it was like, you can now choose. So it was like, pick your own journey thing. So it kind of like showcased how it worked to me. And it felt very alien, like I was communicating with an alien that was like, okay, little human, here's how this works. You can think about these things and you can, resolve these things. Or if it's something that doesn't need to be resolved, you will come to a conclusion that is healthy and an acknowledgement of how meaningful things are. So it was a lot about the meaningfulness of being a human, while also looking at your humanity from the lens of like a human looking at a small wounded creature with compassion. All right, because not everyone's going to maybe look at a small wounded creature with compassion, but that's how I can describe it, is that you're looking at yourself as little, and that your problems they matter, but they're insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Now, there's another aspect to where you feel like you're returning to where you came from, or you are going to where you go after you die, which is one and the same, apparently. In that experience, that's what it feels like. So I had a sense of urgency. I was like, I'm gonna think about everything I need to think about. Because this altered state of consciousness really makes you realize the importance of things and have compassion and understanding towards yourself, because you're removed from yourself. So you're looking at yourself like you're another person observing. And so that observant perspective is really, really helpful. And it can often really help people when they like are struggling with their life, or even sometimes people who like don't want to be alive anymore. I understand how that could really, really help with that, you know? And so let's talk about the visuals. So like I said, I have my eyes closed, you know, and a blindfold on. And then periodically I would get like a little bit overwhelmed, and I would just like open my eyes, and there was like a little tiny, you know, a little tiny space that I could see like around my nose from the blindfold, and I could see my feet, and I would just wiggle my feet. So it was very reassuring when I would just be like, oh yes, you're in a body. And a couple times I actually took off the blindfold, and it was like I was pulled back. My perspective, my vision was about a couple feet away from where it usually was. So it was like looking, not like bird's eye view, but pulled back like a video game to where I could see my body in a different way. That was very interesting. There was also a delay when it came to speech. Like I would talk and then I wouldn't hear myself talk for a little bit. Now, here's the interesting thing. So I had the blindfold on. I could tell when someone was about to come into the room, and I could tell who was about to come into the room. So I was doing this, you know, and I had a doctor, a nurse, and my friend. And so I could tell if it was the doctor that was about to come in, the nurse, or my friend. And the interesting thing, the really, really interesting thing is when my friend came in, I knew that he came in, and I knew that he was about to talk, but then he decided not to. In my mind, I was like, he was about to talk, but he decided not to. After the infusion, he legitimately said, I came in, I was about to talk, and I decided not to. Okay, then that is what was so weird. I was like, he's in here right now. He doesn't want to interrupt, but he kind of wants to say something. You know, now when the doctor would talk, I knew what the doctor was going to say seconds before he said it. So it wasn't like, oh, I know the whole sentence. It was like, I know the word he's about to say before he says it. Now that can be, again, because there's some sort of delay neurologically, and then I'm perceiving it as like that I know what he's about to say, but in fact, he's already said it, but I just didn't hear it till after, because that would make sense in the context of, you know, me talking and then hearing myself talk a couple seconds after I speak. What doesn't make sense is the encounter with the friend coming in, and I just knew that they were there, and I knew that they were about to talk, but they didn't. And I could not see them. I was blindfolded. So that was very interesting. There seems to be a lot of, it opens you up to where if you're already like a sensitive person, you're like sensitive to people's energies, then you can feel that even more. And so to the visuals though, all right, like specifically like the closed eye visuals, they were very alien, very industrial, very digital, very reminiscent of like old Windows 98 screensaver in a way. The colors were not vibrant. They were like greens, dark greens, and dark purples. Like very interesting. The visuals, didn't really like them, because I was like, why can't my brain think of something a little bit cooler? Like, why am I seeing these like screensaver-esque things, you know? The one thing towards the end that was really cool was I was inside the cockpit of a UFO, basically, and it was black. This is like really hard to explain, but everything was black, but the borders of things were like multicolored, like almost like rainbow colored, almost like LED lights. So I could see that things were defined, and I was in a circular UFO standing inside of it. So that was really weird. But again, these were closed eye visuals. If I opened my eyes, I would have this weird ocular thing to, let's say I look up in the corner, then repeatedly I would have that same cycle. So it's like if I look up once, I'm seeing myself look up like 10 times. And I really hated that. I was like, oh no, is this gonna be permanent? I fuck up my brain. Like I had that for a second, but then I just like chilled out. Now, basically, throughout the whole experience, it made me realize how meaningful my life was, even though I already feel like I acknowledged that. It like made that deeper. It validated what I do. It validated my work and my professional efforts. It validated everything. It also really helped me to look at some of the fear that I can hold in regards to like flying on a plane, because I had to fly home. And it was like, stop worrying that you're gonna get in a plane crash. You're not. It was like, you're going to live to be an old man. It showed me a timeline of my birth to my death, and it was like, you are going to live to be very old, is what it told me. And again, when I say it told me this, I wasn't hearing anything. It was like I was getting the message. And yeah, it was like, you don't have to worry about some random catastrophe happening. You know, I definitely can have like hypochondria and OCD and all these other things. And so, yeah, it was just very pure, encouraging, strong, and very different from other psychedelics. Like psilocybin will be like, you're fucking up. Like literally, you are fucking up. What the fuck are you doing? You're a dick. Like, I feel like it's very call out, like psilocybin. And I have a lot of experience with psilocybin and like what people call even heroic doses, which honestly I've only done one, but a heroic dose. So I have a lot of experiences with smaller doses and normal doses and all that. And the message tends to be like, be better, do better. Whereas ketamine is like, you are who you need to be. You are where you need to be at. Everything is okay. Everything is as it should be. Everything is going to continue to be good, and it will get better and better. Everything is beautiful. So yeah, it's just very, very interesting that there's definitely, it was one of the most spiritual experiences I've ever had. And this is coming from a pharmaceutical. So it really broke down a lot of my beliefs around pharmaceuticals. Now, there's another thing that came to me in this experience, because I was scared. I was like, I've never done ketamine. What if I do it and then I want to do it every day? It was like the ketamine was like laughing at that. It was like, yeah, you're not going to want to do this every day. Like, it's all encouraging and all that, but it is hard. It is taxing. Now, the reason it's less taxing is because the place that I go to, Clarity Clinic, and this is in Las Vegas, they use something called BR-NAD+. All right, this is like a different version of NAD+ that has BR, which is brain restoration. And I don't know how this is formulated that makes it different, but it is the strongest form of NAD+. And for those that don't know about NAD+, I'll make a different video on NAD+. I might bring in my homie who introduced me to it, and we'll talk about it. But basically, the NAD+, it grounds you to a certain level and it makes you recover quicker. Because look, if you just get a ket infusion without NAD+, you're probably gonna feel like shit afterwards. You probably will have a headache, you'll probably be nauseous, and you'll feel like you came out of surgery. With the NAD+, you feel pretty amazing afterwards. You bounce back really quick, you know? And so my first experience with ket was with BR-NAD+. And so the after effects were, I was chill, I was hungry, and I was ready to go. Now, I was in Vegas and I was staying with my friend, and you know, they were watching over a patient that was actually getting ketamine and NAD for withdrawal management. And I went with my friend and we went and checked on this person, and that was a couple hours out of my experience. So that kind of tells you how quick I bounced back, that I was going to this Airbnb and meeting this person and encouraging them and being like, checking on them, you know? So that's where I was at. Now, the second ketamine experience, I did a second infusion months later, and I'll do a separate video on that. I did it without NAD+, and when I tell you I felt like shit afterwards, I felt like shit. Now, the next day I felt amazing, but for like 8 to 12 hours after that first infusion, that second infusion without NAD, felt like shit. Complete shit. Headache, nauseous, yeah, overwhelmed in certain ways, overstimulated in certain ways. None of that was there with the Ket and the BRN80 plus. So back to the experience. Time is distorted, okay? So it felt like an eternity, and it felt like a short amount of time. So before I know it, it's over. And I knew, I could tell that it was about to be over because the intensity would like waver a little bit. So once the IV was empty, I knew it was empty. And I took off the blindfold, I look up, and I had to go like this and close one eye for some reason. It just made it to where I could see. So that was something that I was doing when I would open my eyes, is I would close one eye. And so I knew it was over. And I had to pee really bad, so that was the one thing. I was able to, they unhooked me, I was able to get up, stand, go pee, I could walk fine. You know, the second infusion I did without NAD, it was harder to walk, didn't feel as stable, was more dizzy, you know, all of that. So yeah, it was profound. It was really profound, the insight it gave me when it came to the fact that I have healed from so-called addiction, or what I call substance use disorder. That I'd healed from it, I'd moved on, and I didn't need to worry about that ever again. So that was another thing, is it was like, you don't need to worry about it. It was like, you respect your experiences, and you're not gonna consume things that have harmed you. And so why are you worried? Like, anything that you are entertaining, you're doing it for the betterment of yourself and your growth and your mental health. And it just validated that for me. And this was a lot for me to do this infusion when I'd been indoctrinated into abstinence-only recovery, when I'd been taught that if you do something like that, then you need to start over. You know, it strengthened my relationships significantly. It was life-changing. It was one of the most life-changing experiences ever. When I look at my entire life, it's one of the things that stands out, 100%. And as I mentioned, I've done 2 infusions. I'll share more about the second one in a separate video, but I have zero motivation to do another one at this point. There's nothing recreational for me about that. I don't know. It's like work. It's work. It's encouraging and understanding and compassionate, but it is work 100%. So look, I already was an advocate for these infusions after seeing how they work so well for people who are experiencing depression, anxiety, PTSD. And then I got to see how they worked for individuals who were going through withdrawal. And then I experienced it for myself. And so that was just kind of this full circle moment where I was like, yeah, this is something I fully support. And I believe people need access to this, and it should be available to people. And I think it should be used as an option in every single treatment center, you know? So that's it. Now, I was hesitant to share this experience with people because it's a very intimate experience, and I don't like the weird parasocial shit that people do after watching my content. Just please understand that this is me making a video, and that I am a whole person outside of the content that you see. And it sucks I have to say this, but I've just had really weird parasocial encounters with people as of late, and I just wanted to share this. So hit me up in the comments. Let me know, have you experienced ketamine? Have you gotten an infusion? How many milligrams did you get? How did you feel afterwards? Just hit me up in the chat, or I guess they call it the comments here on YouTube, and let me know. Please like and subscribe. I'd appreciate it if people would like this video. I'm gonna keep posting videos here on YouTube, and feel free to comment suggestions for video topics or specific substances. Right now, I'm doing a series where I'm just talking about specific substances, and I'll be happy to make a video. So I hope y'all have a great day. Much love.